I don't care about ethnicity. I'm talking about American women, regardless of their background. In terms of interacting with them casually or being romantically involved, how have your experiences been? For me, many fit the American stereotype of being loud. Some also seemed entitled, but that is not necessarily representative of the whole. I have known some who were quite nice as well. However, this is just my personal experience. What about you? Story 1. Loud, direct, fun, and positive. However, those who are traveling the world may have a positive bias. Story 2. I have only dated one American. I am Australian and she was living here for about 2 years. She was normal, no different from dating an Australian girl, except she had a cute little accent. She was loud, but many of the women I have dated have been. Story 3. There was an American girl who came to study in my city. We matched on Hinge, talked a bit, and wanted to hang out, but then she ghosted me. So, the usual. Story 4. As a Scot, I am enthusiastic and fun. I didn't play games like British girls. If they liked you, they let you know. Story 5. American women were quite forward when I was in college, and I appreciated this. I also preferred using Tinder during that time. I gained weight after I left, so I don't do as well with women anymore, but I'm getting back in shape, albeit slowly. After reading more of this thread, I feel put off. I rarely have negative experiences with women in general, even after I let myself go. It is honestly difficult for me to understand the majority of the negativity in this thread. Story 6. In the past, they have been fantastic and very friendly. I know that some people have negative feelings towards America, but there are far worse cultures in other countries. Story 7. As a Canadian, I haven't minded the American women I have spoken to. When visiting the United States and interacting with them, they would often get curious about how Canada differs from the United States. It was actually really cute. Story 8. I came to America for my bachelor's degree in 2018 and dated a girl from suburban Pennsylvania whom I met in Philadelphia. She was really fun and smart, much more direct in communication than non-American women. She had her own visions, goals, and principles that she stood by. She definitely didn't need to be handheld through the relationship. She was more well put together and better at taking care of herself, except she refused to drink water and eat food. She was sexually more open and active, expressing her femininity with ease and grace. I would also say American women are significantly more competitive than non-American women and somewhat understand where they want to go in life. At the same time, they can be easygoing when that's needed. On the flip side, entitlement and ego issues were high. Casual gaslighting was common in day-to-day activities. The first few months were a learning curve to handle when I was being gaslit and manipulated, but then it became quite easy to dodge her jabs. She was definitely less emotionally mature, and getting her to be accountable for anything was a nightmare. It felt like an uphill battle most of the time. I remember telling her, "Babe, we are on the same team," so many times when we faced issues. Some funny things I never really understood were statements like, "I'm craving Olive Garden." I never understood how you can crave a place instead of a food item. Maybe my background couldn't evolve past the idea that food is just food, regardless of its origin. I'm originally from a landlocked city, and it's safe to say I've had enough beach visits for the rest of my life. I even thought I was more immune to the sun than she was. She became a sexy golden brown while my skin became black, completely cooked. Overall, I would say it's a very complete experience and a great cultural exchange. I definitely gained a lot from it and learned a lot. I would recommend dating American women to all non-American males at least once. If it works, that's great. Otherwise, you'll have a newfound appreciation for women from your own country. Story 9. America is a vast country with many different types of American women. I know this because I moved to the United States in 1996 and eventually married an American woman, but before that, I dated many of them over the last 2 decades. If you want an accurate understanding, it's better to ask what women from Chicago or San Francisco are like. Story 10. I had a distant cousin stay for a while. She had a work visa for a year. She was completely normal, and I still keep in touch with her. Story 11. I'm Canadian. Does that count? I have found American women more enjoyable than Canadians. However, I've only interacted with them during vacations. Story 12. When I was younger and first started using the internet in the early 2000s, I had an online friend from Texas. We got along very well, and she was really cool. I loved her accent, which was always a bonus. That was my only real experience, and it was definitely a positive one. Story 13. A friend married an American lady who was really nice. One of my teachers during university was American, and she was really cool. I used to do readings at a poetry night hosted by an African-American woman from Alabama, who was also very cool. She said she had experienced less racism in Australia than she had back home, which is great to hear. That's about it, I think. I have heard from others that American women make the worst tourists, but I wouldn't know. Story 14. I just showed this to my British husband, and he said, "They're loud and brash and have no class. I'm American." Story 15. As a Brit living in the United States since my 20s, I have found people to be welcoming, straightforward, and efficient. They seem to know what they want. Story 16. I volunteered for a few years at a local arts charity run by a Black woman from Louisiana. She was the loveliest person I ever met, and I encountered her during the lowest point in my life. She treated me the same way she would anyone else and placed a lot of trust in me. She is also the only person I know who is more sarcastic than I am. Story 17. You are an Indian man who is interested in men's rights and frequently engages in discussions in forums to argue. Individuals like you often view women who do not conform to traditional expectations as too Western. Story 18. I appreciate all ethnicities and do not have a specific type, but I look for certain qualities. While it's wrong to generalize, sometimes it's a subconscious way of staying on the safe side. Can be unpredictable. American women can be truly amazing, kind, fun, and possess a strong work ethic that motivates you beyond belief. On the other hand, some may humiliate you, often in a group setting, and engage in mind games that can border on emotional abuse. Many people mistakenly believe that physical violence is the only form of harm, justifying cruel behavior when it does not involve physicality. This can result in social and financial consequences, so one must exercise caution. Having overly high or unreachable standards can be frustrating, but everyone is entitled to their preferences. American women may disregard you if you do not meet certain criteria, such as height, income, or social status, which can make dating more challenging compared to other ethnic backgrounds. For me, it feels like a 50-50 situation. Dating has certainly shifted significantly in recent years. Story 19. When I traveled from Russia through Finland, Sweden, and Iceland to eventually end up in Israel after the war in Ukraine started, I encountered many women from different backgrounds and countries. I found women from the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada to be the most entitled, self-centered, and vocal about their political beliefs. In contrast, women from Iceland and Sweden asked me out several times and offered to pay the bill in full, which was a total culture shock for me since I grew up in Russia, where gender roles are very traditional. I have nothing but respect for women from Sweden and Iceland because they at least practice what they preach regarding their progressive political beliefs. Women from the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada, however, reject traditional gender norms on their part and engage in a lot of progressive politics, but they expect men to continue being traditional and to ask them out as conservative men usually do. Story 20. I moved to America when I was 20. This is a generalization based on personal experiences, so it is by no means an accurate depiction of American women. I have been on many dates with American women, and the majority of the time I found them to be entitled, expecting special treatment, demanding unrealistic high standards for shallow reasons, and having inflated egos. Such expectations are usually not backed up by actual qualities or virtues. The majority of American women I have been romantically involved with seem to display combative and antisocial behaviors, including manipulative tendencies, regardless of their age. I did not notice any significant improvement in maturity for women in their mid or late 20s. They also appear to be affected by unusually high rates of mental illness. Women from my home country tend to be more attentive, kind, and respectful, and they are rarely affected by mental illness. Actually, American women remind me of men from my home country who, in my experience, tend to display more negative traits. American men seem to be nicer and more respectful than the men I grew up around. Again, all of this comes from purely anecdotal stories and personal experiences, so take it with caution. Story 21. I will return to this question next year when I am back from my road trip to the United States with my mom. We are celebrating my 25th birthday, and my mom is deciding whether to go in March or September. September is my birth month, which would make sense, but March would be during a warmer season. Story 22. I have met a few Portuguese people here in Germany where I live. They talk a lot and seem to have some superiority complexes. Although I know they are not all like this, the likelihood of meeting someone with a similar attitude seems higher among Americans. Story 23. To add some context, if you are interacting with American women in your home country, you are likely interacting with very affluent women. Most Americans are struggling financially and cannot afford to travel internationally. This could contribute to behavior. Story 24. I am 35 years old and have lived abroad for 13 years. I prefer to distance myself from women from America, Canada, and the United Kingdom. The women from these three countries often exhibit behavior that I find disrespectful. While I have met many women from these countries, I can only recall a few positive experiences. The overall vibe has been disappointing. Story 25. They are quite loud and sometimes speak in an unnatural high pitch. Mostly they are loud, especially in groups. Story 26. It was somewhat unpleasant, to be honest. They were from Los Angeles, and I assumed they were affluent. When they visited my hometown, they were quite condescending towards us and our local culture. They proudly proclaimed that their lifestyle back home involved smoking large marijuana cigars, dancing to rap music, and having casual relationships with multiple partners simultaneously. They shared all this without considering that it might be perceived as inappropriate by others, as if their way of living was the only valid one. It made me feel a bit uneasy, to be honest. Story 27. Bubbly and positive. She was also energetic and eager to do everything all the time. As someone who is more relaxed, I had to make an effort to keep up, but it was worth it. If I had met someone like her in my late 30s, I would probably find it a bit draining, but I doubt she would have been as energetic in her late 30s either. At the time, she was studying in the United Kingdom, and we split up when she went back home after her studies. Story 28. I've been all over, and women in the United States seem to be less casual and more focused on money compared to my experience in the European Union. It is definitely less fun to hang out with them. In the European Union, it was always more inviting, like, hey, you're cute, let's do this. Whereas women in the United States often expect you to present your investment portfolio even when they earn minimum wage, but they still want to emphasize their appearance. Story 29. I met someone who was in a relationship with a friend of a friend. She moved to Sweden for love. Having been here for a while, it seems she has adapted to the reserved nature of Swedes. However, she was very nice and fun to talk to. It feels surreal to converse with American people since I only hear and read about them online or in movies. Story 30. I found that many stereotypes generally held true. Out of the more than 20 countries I have traveled to, I think I liked women from the United States the least. I might say Pakistani women were more challenging to connect with, mainly because they were so reserved and standoffish. Story 31. I am Indian. My experience mostly came from my circle of friends in college and meetups in new cities, rather than dating apps. My Italian-American ex taught me how to make proper gnocchi and carbonara. He had a significant cultural impact on me and was my support during the COVID-19 pandemic when I felt extremely stressed due to the travel ban and the dire situation worldwide. Story 32. We can see your post history. I would say you are giving off disturbing vibes, but you are in the United Kingdom. Please do not harm others because deep down you may be struggling with self-hatred. Consider taking a break from the internet. Story 33. If you have an accent, are in your 20s, fun, and good-looking, you can take them home quite easily. America is a place where many different people from all over the world reside, especially in California and Florida. If they are raised in the Philippines, Latina, or are second generation, they will often be shaped by those cultural values. Although they may see the financial aspect as important and have higher income standards for long-term relationships, I have dated individuals with values similar to those abroad. I have encountered good women and some who were more American and somewhat wild and spoiled. As a white man, I tend to pursue women who are not white, and my experiences have generally been positive, as they still maintained a strong connection to the culture of their parents' home country. Story 34. American women are fine. However, there are two things American women will never say. One, it's my fault. Two, I'm sorry. Story 35. I was completely drunk once on Phi Island. I walked past a convenience store and saw a young Asian girl crying with a friend. I approached and asked if everyone was okay. I was immediately told to stop, explaining in a very strong Californian accent, and to leave. I assumed someone had been rude, so I walked off without a care. I walked maybe 15 meters down the street and saw a group of Dutch guys standing around laughing, discussing the girl. I asked what was going on, hoping I wasn't walking into a situation with inappropriate comments. One of the guys then took off his sandal and I noticed "Made in China" tattooed on his foot. I burst out laughing, realizing what had happened, until I heard the scream of the Californian accent approaching me. She pushed me out of the way and began yelling at me and the Dutch guys, genuinely wanting to confront us. We all called the tourism police, and she left with them simply because she was making such a scene. The Dutch guy showed the Thai officer the tattoo, and he thought it was all a bit silly. It definitely wasn't the best tattoo, but it was quite amusing. All in all, like with the men as well, some people just cannot help but make things about themselves. Story 36. The working class American girls I've met are down to earth, fun, read books, and have an interest in arts and culture. American working class girls work hard and take pride in being independent without needing a man to take care of them. They are almost always feminists, but their meanings can vary significantly. For some, it just means equal rights and equal pay. Others may want to turn the patriarchy into a matriarchy. So it's important to ask what they mean by that. American women rarely speak another language besides English, but when they do, they take great pride in it and showcase this achievement. While it may seem amusing, for them this is a significant accomplishment in a country where some people struggle with their native language. Additionally, American girls often lack knowledge of foreign geography, so it's best not to laugh when they ask if London is in Paris. They are not stupid. They are simply unaware. I find American working-class women to possess street smarts and have a wealth of cultural knowledge, sometimes even more than I do. For instance, I was on a date with an American girl who expressed her love for classical philosophy books. To my surprise, she went on and on about how good Thus Spoke Zarathustra by Friedrich Nietzsche is. I had never even heard of the book, despite having studied some philosophy in high school. Would I recommend American Girls? If you appreciate extroverted, independent, culturally knowledgeable, hardworking, and fun women, then you'll likely enjoy women from the United States. Conversely, if you prefer introverted, feminine, stay-at-home, timid, conservative women, or those who are gentle and possess a good bedside manner, then an American woman may not be the right fit for you. This is what I have observed from dating 3 American women and having many in my social circles over the years. Story 37. For the first time in my life, I felt that the color of my skin mattered. She was upset because her mother was dating a man who was darker than me. I liked her as a friend, but after that, any romantic aspirations I had were gone. Story 38. I didn't meet many people, but those I encountered were unusual. This might be due to the fact that I met individuals from the influencer and media sectors. Story 39. Oh man, every time I've had an experience with an American lady, it has been hard work. Some have been in the United States, but the majority have been in Europe. I simply stay away. I found I have nothing in common with most of them. I generally have more in common with Europeans, being from the United Kingdom. I do remember meeting an amazing Canadian lady in France once, though. She was fantastic. Story 40. Well, I'm Canadian, so it's not exactly far. I'm currently dating an American woman, and she's wonderful, sweet, and very innocent. She's quiet unless she gets excited. I would say her most typical American trait is that she gets very enthusiastic about sports. I've also had several female American friends. One was quite religious, but the others were down-to-earth women. I wouldn't describe any of them as loud or entitled. I've never encountered that stereotype. Story 41. Not being American. I can share insights I've gathered from a variety of countries over the past 8 years while working overseas. I frequently interact with large local teams on various projects. When a diverse group of locals and expatriates gathers, conversations often lead to comparisons and opinions. One question that arises almost every time is, who makes the worst tourists in your country? I know some may dismiss this, but I encourage you to ask this question yourself during your next overseas trip to confirm. It usually points to Western women. They are often described as rude, demanding, and entitled. In Asian countries, they may say, they think they own the world, act like queens, and view everyone as inferior. Many local women I've spoken with often express disdain for foreign women, perceiving them as brainless, desperate for visas, and poor. This viewpoint is troublingly widespread, even if it seems exaggerated. Interestingly, the women I dated abroad were often business owners and successful, contradicting these stereotypes. Curiously, it is often foreign women who describe Western women in this manner, with Western typically referring to America and the United Kingdom. I dated a woman who owned a cleaning service, and she told me Western women were so difficult to deal with that she eventually decided to stop serving them once she had enough clients. Western men are seldom the subjects of these complaints. While they may be perceived as excessive drinkers and partygoers, they are generally seen as friendly and approachable, which I found intriguing. In discussions among foreign men about which women they find most desirable for relationships, the top responses are usually Eastern European and Asian, excluding Koreans and Japanese. Koreans often face challenges due to rising feminism, while Japanese culture suffers from high infidelity rates. I merely report what I have consistently heard in these conversations. I have yet to encounter a man who expresses interest in marrying a Western woman. If the topic arises, it is typically from an understanding of why men might seek partners elsewhere. I understand this perspective may be difficult for women to accept, and many respond defensively when they hear such feedback, but it's important to consider that a shared sentiment across various cultures might hold some truth. To clarify, I recognize that Western women are not a monolithic group. Not all fit these descriptions, and there are indeed kind-hearted individuals among them. I am simply sharing the perception that exists in the countries I have visited, based on my experiences. Furthermore, much of this feedback originates from local women who work with Western women daily, not from foreign men. This is not merely a case of rumors or judgments based on media portrayals. If you doubt my observations, I suggest engaging in your own discussions during your next overseas trip and see what you learn. I am confident you will find similar sentiments expressed, as the consistency of these opinions is notable. Story 42. Piece of advice. The white ones are the most annoying, especially the liberal ones. They criticize colonialism but are often the first to dictate how a different culture should act. Story 43. I'm from the United Kingdom and from one of the Celtic countries, so personally, whenever I have gone to the States, I have always enjoyed the company of American women. I used to find that they were usually very enthusiastic once they got going and often did most of the work in the initial connection. I appreciate forward, modern women who are not waiting for a knight in shining armor, just someone who knows how to have a good time. I had a real weakness for a Southern accent. It was hard to say no. In fact, I don't think I ever said no to that accent. But when I was straight, I don't think I said no much anyway, especially if something intimate was suggested. Who has the strength to say no to that? You just have to find the real, normal women who enjoy sex and fun times as much as men, and avoid those who are searching for the ideal partner. You know the type, I mean, those on a quest for their dream husband. I avoided them. Story 44. Friendly and talkative. I have a British accent, which may help. Additionally, people in America tend to be more outgoing than those in the UK. Story 45. I don't have much experience. The one person I met gave me an entitled vibe and confused confidence with arrogance. She exuded an aura I didn't appreciate, but I'm not going to judge an entire nation based on one individual. Story 46. I met a woman who was separated from her husband. She ended the relationship because he wasn't giving her enough attention. A few weeks later, she casually mentioned that he was dying of cancer and had 3 months left to live. Story 47. It is certainly easier to talk with a British accent, which has been more helpful than I expected when I first went to the United States. Story 48. Somewhat clueless and naive about the world, her attitudes were consistent with what you would expect if you had seen a lot of American media or spent time with Americans. However, there was nothing particularly outstanding or markedly different from European women. She appeared slightly less self-reliant and more submissive, but I believe that was just a personality quirk at the time, not a cultural trait. Story 49. As an American male, this is why I don't date American women most of the time. I am thankful for being near large cities and enjoying warm weather. Story 50. My sample size is 4, 3 of which I dated for a while and 1 in which I was just interested. The main difference I felt was how easily I was replaced when things didn't go their way. As soon as I became inconvenient, I was ghosted. There was no effort to work things out or to stay in touch. I only experienced that once with someone I dated locally. One of them even had the audacity to say that she is a high-value woman and that I am below her, and not even during a fight, just matter-of-factly. Story 51. I used to speak to an American woman online years ago. She always seemed to have a lot of energy and was happy with her cats. I can't say more than that. I never even knew her name and we never discussed details or identifying information. Story 52. The mindset of being single, childless, and proud of it is hard to interpret. Based on historical data from the Census Bureau and forecasts from Morgan Stanley, 45% of prime working-age women, ages 25 to 44, will be single by 2030, the largest share in history, up from 41% in 2018. Story 53. As an Australian, I have always appreciated American women. They tend to be quite forthright, and their various accents are attractive. All my interactions with American women have been very positive. Story 54. I must confess that American women dress and appear feminine at first glance. However, the penis can be a bit off-putting. Story 55. The easiest split is between left-leaning and right-leaning perspectives. One subset has a very high likelihood of expecting you to take responsibility for or apologize for things you never did, and is unlikely to be a good fit for long-term prospects. The other subset tends to have low patience for the former and values individuals who have earned their personal trust rather than nameless entities that are later co-opted by opportunistic capitalism. Story 56. Definitely different from the women in my country. I always knew I would never marry one of them. Everything was just too much for them. Story 57. From my interactions with them, I try to avoid them. They are usually friendly and hold no ill intentions, but they are very loud, and I often have to explain everything to them, like, yes, that place actually exists. I understand that there are many types of Americans, but the ones I usually encounter as tourists here are often the Valley Girl types who say things like, oh my gosh, is that a big fountain? That's wild. Story 58. If they come across as entitled, I would attribute that to the men who elevate them. I would describe them as shallow and materialistic. Social media, which allows for photo editing and the creation of a false persona, is ideal for this. I have noticed attractive women from other countries spending time with less conventionally attractive men due to their intelligence or personality. That is rare in the United States, unless the men possess wealth and can shower them with gifts. Story 59. Foreign women are generally considered more feminine, typically lighter, and not obese. They have certain expectations of themselves in relationships. In contrast, American women are often perceived differently. They may be viewed as less feminine, and some may struggle with being overweight, believing they do not need to change their behavior in relationships. Story 61. Needy. 2. Deceptive. 3. Conceited, privileged, spoiled, and self-entitled. 4. Ungrateful, unbalanced, unstable, inconsistent, and excessive. This is just a short list. Story 61. I'm Australian and have never met an American woman. Send me one of those southern girls in tight pants, cowgirl boots, and a hat. Story 62. My first girlfriend was American. Her father was American, and her mother shared my nationality. We dated for the 10 months she was an exchange student in my country, so we knew from the start there was a fixed expiration date. This was around 27 years ago, so the extreme behaviors and entitlement of today had not yet emerged. Everything went well. Story 63. They fart hard and they fart long. Perfect example is Taylor Swift. Or is she Canadian? Either way, she is a farter. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.